Lauren Whitlow thought Maui would be her peaceful escape, a break from the spotlight and a chance to rediscover herself. But when Jessie Barra, her former best friend turned silent rival, arrived on the island with a hidden agenda, paradise quickly turned into a hunting ground, and 9 days later, a shallow grave revealed a betrayal more chilling than anyone could imagine. Lauren Whitlow had always been drawn to the ocean. There was something about the crashing waves, the endless blue horizon, and the warm kiss of tropical air that helped her breathe when the rest of the world felt too heavy. At 27, she had built a large following on social media by sharing snapshots of her adventurous life, sunsets in Santorini, yoga on mountain cliffs, and her signature sun chaser philosophy that inspired thousands. But behind the perfect photos was a growing sense of exhaustion. The likes, the sponsorships, the constant demand to stay relevant had begun to chip away at her sense of peace. So, she booked a week-long solo trip to Maui. No brand deals, no filters, just her, the ocean, and silence. She arrived in Maui on a Monday afternoon. Her Airbnb was a small, sun-faded cottage just a few steps from the beach in Kihei, surrounded by blooming plumeria trees and the gentle rustle of palms. It was everything she hoped it would be. Her first few days were peaceful. She posted a few casual stories on Instagram, but largely stayed off her phone. She took long walks along the shore, sipped pineapple smoothies under beach umbrellas, and journaled at sunrise. Locals described her as friendly but quiet. She often smiled at strangers but kept to herself. On the 4th day, Lauren decided to unwind with a drink at the Blue Coral Bar, a thatched, roof beach lounge known for its vibrant cocktails and live island music. It was close enough to walk, and by early evening she was there, wearing a flowing white dress and sandals, her golden hair tied up in a loose bun. Patrons later recalled seeing her chatting briefly with a man at the bar. He was tall, tan, with a white linen shirt and a relaxed, local air. They shared a laugh, clinked glasses, and at one point, he pointed toward the ocean. Security footage confirmed she left the bar alone around 9:43 p.m., walking toward the beach with her drink in hand. After that, there were no more sightings. The next morning, the Airbnb host noticed her beach towel and sunglasses still lying on the porch swing. Her rental car, a silver Jeep Wrangler, was untouched in the gravel driveway. Her flip-flops sat by the front door. At first, the host thought she had left early for a sunrise hike. But by evening, when she still hadn't returned, concern set in. Lauren was never one to mischeck out instructions or go silent without notice. The host tried calling, but the call went straight to voicemail. The police were contacted, and within hours, a missing persons case was opened. Lauren's sister back in Phoenix was devastated. They had spoken every day since the trip began. She said Lauren had sounded calm, happy, more at peace than she had in months. The sudden silence didn't make sense. As word spread, the case caught media attention. Search crews combed the coastline, hiked dense trails, and even used drones to search from the air. Volunteers passed out flyers. Locals joined in. Tourists were questioned. But days passed, and no one could find any trace of Lauren. Her phone, found underneath the bar stool where she'd been sitting, offered no clues. The last message sent was a selfie captioned, "One more night in paradise." After that, nothing. The man in the white linen shirt was tracked down and questioned. His name was Alan Kaleo, a local artist who sold seashell jewelry. He claimed they had shared a single drink and a short conversation, nothing more. Police couldn't tie him to anything suspicious, and with no solid leads, he was let go. Maui was supposed to be a haven, a peaceful retreat. But for Lauren, it became the last place she was ever seen. And the ocean, once her escape, now held the first clues to a mystery that was only beginning to unfold. In the hours and days following Lauren Whitlow's disappearance, Maui's serene beauty took on a chilling stillness. The palm trees still swayed, the waves still lapped against the shore, and the skies remained a brilliant shade of blue. But beneath the calm exterior, panic and confusion spread across the island. Word of the missing tourist quickly moved from whisper to headline. Flyers were taped to lampposts, shared in local shops, and posted across every beach access point. The hashtag #FeeFunLauren flooded social media. What began as a solo trip to reconnect with herself had turned into a nightmare no one could explain. Authorities increased their presence across Kihei and surrounding areas. They retraced Lauren's last steps with precision. Security footage from the Blue Coral Bar showed her clearly, relaxed, smiling, holding a crimson drink. Her last known movements were captured at 9:43 p.m. as she walked toward the beach. A few people noticed her heading down a sand path toward the shoreline, but after that, she seemed to vanish into thin air. The bar's beach was trafficked during the day but hauntingly quiet at night. There were no witnesses, no screams reported, no signs of struggle, just a stretch of dark water and soft sand where her footprints eventually faded. Search teams combed the area relentlessly. Police dogs were brought in, but the salty air and shifting tides made scent tracking impossible. Drones flew over the coastline, scanning dense brush and hidden ravines. Divers scoured underwater caves and tide pools. Days passed, and nothing surfaced. Lauren's belongings at the Airbnb remained untouched, her suitcase neatly unpacked, toiletries aligned in the bathroom, and her passport locked inside a travel pouch. Her laptop was open on the bed, displaying a half-written journal entry saved at 6:12 p.m., the night she vanished. It was filled with thoughts about clarity, peace, and how she was finally learning to let go of the pressure that had once consumed her. Detectives noticed something odd on the 5th day of the investigation. A purchase had been made with Lauren's debit card hours after she disappeared. Specifically, at a 24-hour gas station nearly 18 miles away in a remote part of the island. The transaction time was 2:57 a.m. The card was used to buy a tank of gas and a bottle of water. Surveillance footage from the gas station was poor, shot from an overhead camera. It showed someone in a hoodie exiting a vehicle that matched the shape and size of Lauren's rented silver Jeep Wrangler. The figure kept their head low and never faced the camera. Police paused the footage frame by frame, hoping for a glimpse of the person's face, but it was no use. The license plate wasn't visible either. Still, the footage raised serious questions. If Lauren had been taken, someone had gone to great lengths to hide their trail. If she had driven herself there, why didn't she use her phone, call her sister, or return to her Airbnb? That area was far from any major resort or tourist attraction. And if she was alive, why hadn't there been any communication? Her phone, after all, had been left behind. Clean, undamaged, and still powered on until the battery finally drained. The investigation grew colder each day. Suspicion briefly returned to Alan Khalil, the man from the bar, but his alibi checked out. He had been home alone, confirmed by timestamped security footage from a neighboring shop. Police interviewed other patrons from the night of Lauren's disappearance, including bartenders and servers, but none had seen anything strange or suspicious. Everyone described Lauren as kind, polite, and slightly withdrawn, like someone who was more interested in watching the waves than engaging with the crowd. As the 9th day approached, tension mounted. Locals grew uneasy. Tourists began questioning the safety of the island, and Lauren's family clung to hope while quietly preparing for the worst. The ocean, which had offered so many answers to her in life, now guarded its secrets tightly. But just as investigators began shifting resources to other cases, a shocking discovery emerged from the island's shadows, and the mystery would finally take a dark and irreversible turn. On the 9th day of Lauren Wetlow's disappearance, Maui's relentless sunshine was briefly overshadowed by an eerie discovery that would shatter any lingering hope of a happy ending. A couple on vacation hiking near La Perouse Bay, a rugged, volcanic stretch far from the polished resorts and manicured beaches, were exploring an unmarked path just beyond the main trail. They were looking for sea turtles near the tide pools when something unusual caught their attention. A pair of oversized sunglasses sticking awkwardly out from a pile of disturbed sand and leaves beneath a crooked kiao tree. Initially, they thought little of it. Items often get lost in tourist areas. But as they got closer, they noticed the sand appeared recently moved, unnaturally loose, with subtle indentations that didn't match the rest of the terrain. Curiosity turned to alarm when they caught a glimpse of a cloth pattern peeking out. A beach towel, faded but distinctively colorful, partially buried. Something was very wrong. They immediately called the police, and within the hour, the area was swarming with investigators. A perimeter was established, and forensics teams began the delicate work of excavation. Beneath the sand, wrapped tightly in the towel, was a body. The remains had begun to decay under the tropical heat, but personal items, bracelets, a toe ring, a small heart-shaped anklet, made identification grimly straightforward. Dental records would later confirm what her family already feared: the body was Lauren Whitlow. The scene was grim. The shallow grave was no more than 2 feet deep, hurriedly covered, and concealed only by natural debris. There were no drag marks suggesting she had been carried there, likely from a nearby road. Forensics uncovered evidence of blunt force trauma to the back of her skull, indicating that Lauren had not fallen or drowned. She had been struck. Nearby, tucked under a small outcrop of rocks, they found 2 hollowed-out coconuts used as makeshift cups. One still had residue from a sugary cocktail, the other contained traces of a prescription sedative, later identified as zolpidem, a drug commonly used for sleep. Her purse and phone were missing, but a long blonde hair, matched to Lauren, was found twisted into the bark of a tree just several yards from the grave, likely snagged during a struggle or in the moments before she was buried. The location was remote, accessible only by foot or a rugged-off road vehicle. It was not a place a tourist would stumble into accidentally. This grave had been chosen. Someone knew the terrain and had taken careful steps to conceal her, just not carefully enough. With the discovery of Lauren's body, the case shifted instantly from a missing person search to a homicide investigation. Police returned to every detail of the timeline. The use of her debit card at the gas station became even more critical. If her killer had used the card, it meant they were still nearby, possibly hiding in plain sight. Investigators cross-referenced security footage from the gas station, the Blue Coral Bar, and nearby traffic cameras. They expanded their search to pawn shops, Facebook Marketplace, and even island car rental return logs, hunting for any inconsistency that could place someone in possession of Lauren's belongings. A breakthrough came when a seller on Facebook Marketplace reported a strange buyer. 2 days after Lauren's disappearance, a young woman had purchased a shovel in cash. She was described as edgy, impatient, and wearing sunglasses even as dusk fell. The woman hadn't shared her name, but the transaction was logged, and the seller remembered the vehicle she had arrived in. A silver Jeep Wrangler with rental tags still attached. This information stunned investigators. Until now, they had focused almost entirely on male suspects. A female perpetrator had not been part of their working theory. But now, a troubling picture was beginning to form, and it wasn't a stranger or passing tourist. It was someone who had come to the island not for peace or paradise, but with a plan. The grave had told part of the story. The killer had left the rest scattered in digital breadcrumbs, just waiting to be found. The discovery of the shallow grave triggered a rapid escalation in the investigation, and as detectives retraced Lauren Wetlow's final days, a new name surfaced from the depths of her digital life. Jessie Wybera. She wasn't a stranger. In fact, she had once been Lauren's closest friend, a fellow influencer with whom Lauren had traveled, collaborated, and grown her early following. But that friendship had publicly dissolved nearly a year before the Maui trip. Their followers had speculated about their fallout, pointing to cryptic posts and passive-aggressive captions, but neither had addressed the situation directly. What was now evident to investigators, however, was that Jessie's connection to Lauren was far from over. Buried deep within Lauren's old Instagram stories and tagged photos, Jessie's name appeared again and again. Co-hosted trips, brand giveaways, and matching vacation shots. 1 year ago, they were inseparable. Then came silence. But now, surveillance records, Airbnb bookings, and airline manifests revealed something chilling. Jessie Barra had quietly flown to Maui just 2 days before Lauren disappeared. She had booked a modest rental in a different part of the island under a pseudonym, Jessica Byrne, and had paid in cash. She hadn't posted anything during her time on the island. No pictures, no videos, no check-ins. For someone who lived online, she had gone disturbingly dark. Authorities tracked Jessie down in Los Angeles, where she had returned only days after Lauren's body was found. She was brought in for questioning and initially denied everything. She claimed she hadn't seen Lauren in over 6 months, and that her trip to Maui was a coincidence, intended as a break from social media. But when investigators obtained a warrant for her phone and laptop, the truth began to unravel quickly. Buried in her deleted files was a video draft for a healing retreat vlog, recorded near La Perouse Bay. Though Jessie wasn't in the frame, the camera had captured something damning, muffled screaming in the background, a woman's voice, frightened and frantic. When filtered and enhanced, experts identified the voice as Lauren's. Presented with the evidence, Jessie broke. She confessed to meeting Lauren on the night of her disappearance, but her version of the events differed drastically from the forensics. According to Jessie, she had followed Lauren to the Blue Coral Bar that evening, unsure if she wanted to confront her or simply observe. Seeing Lauren laughing, seemingly carefree, reignited a wave of bitterness and rage. Jessie claimed they had argued on the beach, words exchanged over betrayal, fame, and a stolen sponsorship deal that had once promised both of them financial freedom. In the heat of the confrontation, Lauren supposedly slipped, hit her head on a rock, and stopped moving. Jessie said she panicked. She checked for a pulse and, finding none, dragged Lauren's body up the path under cover of darkness. She wrapped her in a towel, buried her in a shallow grave, and abandoned the jeep later that night. She insisted it was an accident. A tragic mistake fueled by emotion, not malice. But the autopsy results had already debunked that claim. The wound on Lauren's head had not come from a fall. It was clean, deliberate, and struck with force. The presence of a sedative in her system suggested premeditation, not panic. Further investigation uncovered more troubling evidence. Jessie had been watching Lauren's online activity closely for months. She had kept access to a shared cloud calendar from their earlier collaborations and knew Lauren's travel dates before they were posted publicly. She had created fake accounts to follow her silently and track her movements. The level of obsession was far more advanced than anyone had anticipated. Jessie was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, use of a controlled substance in a criminal act, and evidence tampering. The once envied influencer duo had become a cautionary tale. The friendship that had started with matching bracelets and shared sunsets had ended in deception, jealousy, and a grave covered in sand. And as the truth finally came into view, the question that haunted everyone wasn't just how, but why it took 9 days for the world to realize that one woman's ambition had turned deadly. The arrest of Jessie Barra stunned both Lauren Whitlow's followers and the wider public. In the curated world of social media, the two women had once appeared inseparable, smiling under waterfalls, sipping lattes in Paris, dancing on rooftops in Mexico City. But behind the filtered images and collaborative captions had been a tension growing steadily, slowly boiling beneath the surface until it erupted into a tragedy that shocked even the most hardened investigators. As the final pieces of the case came together, what emerged wasn't just a story of jealousy. It was one of calculated obsession. The prosecution built its case methodically. Jessie hadn't just snapped in the moment. Evidence showed she had arrived in Maui with a purpose. She had tracked Lauren's itinerary through remnants of their shared digital tools, a neglected cloud calendar and collaborative brand planner, and timed her own travel to intersect perfectly. Her flight, rental, and accommodation were all booked in aliases. She paid in cash when she could and used prepaid cards to avoid paper trails. But she wasn't just covering her tracks. She was creating a shadow presence, someone close enough to watch but far enough to stay hidden. In court, prosecutors painted a chilling picture of events. On the night of Lauren's disappearance, Jessie followed her to the Blue Coral Bar and waited for an opening. When Lauren left the bar for a quiet walk along the beach, Jessie saw her chance. She had brought sedatives, dissolved into a coconut cocktail. At some point, she convinced Lauren to sit and talk. Maybe it was under the pretense of reconciliation. Maybe it was confrontation from the start. But Lauren never made it back. The physical evidence reinforced the theory. 2 coconut shells were recovered near the grave, one containing trace amounts of zolpidem, the other bearing Lauren's DNA. The scene showed no signs of chaos, no fight in the sand, suggesting Lauren may have already been sedated or subdued when the fatal blow was delivered. The wound itself was narrow and severe, likely from a glass bottle or a blunt object. In her confession, Jessie had said she only meant to scare Lauren, to humble her. But the coroner's report made clear that the act was not just violent, but final. The courtroom watched in silence as messages, deleted drafts, and location pings were presented. Jessie's phone showed weeks of quiet stalking, including GPS data placing her near Lauren's Airbnb days before the murder. There was no hacking involved, just forgotten permissions from a time when the two women trusted each other completely. Lauren had never revoked Jessie's access to the calendar they once used to plan travel shoots. That simple oversight had cost her everything. Jessie's defense team argued emotional instability, citing pressure from fading fame, financial decline, and deteriorating mental health. But it wasn't enough. After weeks of testimony and digital forensics, she was convicted of second-degree murder, sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole for the first 20. She never spoke publicly again. Lauren's family returned to Phoenix with more than just memories. They launched the Light for Lauren Foundation, aimed at raising awareness about digital safety and stalking prevention, especially for women in public careers. The foundation hosted retreats, workshops, and partnered with travel companies to develop resources for solo travelers. Lauren's story became a national cautionary tale, one shared not just for its tragedy, but to warn others of the quiet dangers hidden behind the glossy curtain of curated online lives. Back in Maui, the beach near La Perouse Bay remains open, but hikers now pass by a small memorial stone tucked beneath the same kiau tree where the sunglasses were found. It reads, "In loving memory of Lauren Wetlow, light chaser, soul seeker, forever free." The grave that once concealed the truth now stands as a symbol of it. And for those who followed Lauren's journey online, what once looked like a dream vacation became the beginning of a nightmare none of them could have imagined. Behind the smiles and sunset filters, envy had festered into something deadly. And for 9 long days, Paradise had buried a secret in sand and silence.